This is Meet the Pros, the music business podcast from anyone can book a gig. I'm Eamon Laughlin, and welcome to episode 5. I'm joined today, as always, by agent, musician, and music educator Matt Leon. Our guest today is Lydia Liebman, founder of Lydia Liebman Promotions, a leading PR firm in jazz. She's also been recognized on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list and led multiple Grammy-winning campaigns for her roster of artists. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back to our Meet the Pros interview series. This is our 5th episode. Today we're going to be covering PR, publicity, promotion, and we have the lovely Lydia Liebman guest here with us to discuss all of that. She founded her own PR agency when she was still in school and has continued to run that for the past, what has it been now? 13, 14 years?
Yeah, since 2011. So almost 14 years. Crazy.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about that, maybe touching on her recent Grammy adjacency, and just talking about what an artist needs for publicity, how to pursue that area of the industry if you're interested, and just talking about Lydia's wealth of experience. So thank you so much for being here, Lydia.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
To get things started, we've just been asking our guests to talk about how they first got into the industry and their career so far, and kind of what pushed them or drew them into that particular sector of the music industry at large.
Yeah. So I started my company, Lydia Liebman Promotions, in my dorm room while at Emerson College in 2011. So I've been going on now. It's my 14th year. And I kind of came to this side of the industry kind of in a semi-roundabout way. My parents are both professional musicians. My mom is Karis Byzantine Liebman, an educator, music educator, and has worked in the music book distribution business. And my father is Dave Liebman, the saxophonist. So there's, been a lot of just natural, I was naturally just sort of, in the biz, I guess, in a way. I didn't start loving jazz. I was your typical rebellious, pre-teenager, and was just like, no. And, eventually kind of came around to it. And I first started as like a musician myself, as a vocalist and a pianist, studied that throughout high school. And when I went to college, I went to Emerson College for political communications with the idea of going to Berkeley, kind of part-time. They had this pro arts consortium program that they had at the time. I don't know if they still do. Basically allowed me to take like half my course load at other Boston area art schools, and one of those was Berkeley. So really kind of through that, I was taking my music class at Berkeley. I was at Emerson doing polycom. After one semester, I actually changed to producing for film, television, radio. I was like, political communications is not for me. I stand by that decision for sure in these days. So that was really kind of how I got to school. I started doing the radio station there at Emerson, WERS, and also WECB. Had a college radio station, a college radio program that was jazz focused, and it did really well. And it was kind of during that period that I became exposed to like the other side of the business. I became exposed to radio promoters. I got to see like what a press release looks like. I saw, what a one sheet is, like all of that. And it kind of just was a natural occurrence. As I was making friends with musicians at Berkeley, they were having shows and they didn't really know how to promote it. I didn't really know how to promote it either, but I was like, let me help you promote it, whatever that means. And I literally just kind of like learned on the job. My friends let me kind of test things out and started like helping to promote their shows. And then that kind of developed into, sooner or later, it developed into kind of what I am doing today. I sort of learned the ropes and learned a lot more about like what a publicist actually does and what that role is, and what it takes to do that. And truthfully, just kind of after doing it in college for like 4 years, I moved to New York and was applying for like a bunch of radio jobs and all this stuff. And it was like really hard to land something, even though I had like a lot of experience. It's just so hard. And I kept doing the PR thing. And one day I kind of woke up and was like, oh, wow, like I kind of do, like I'm making money off of this. Like I'm kind of like able to do this. Like I should just go all in and just do this. So that's really what I did. I was like a very organic thing. Definitely didn't, go to school with the intention of becoming like a jazz publicist. I just loved the music, and it was just part of my MO, I guess, to just try to work in some capacity toward it. And I knew I didn't want to be a professional musician, but I kind of found my way doing it this way. And then here we are. So, yeah, it was an interesting little journey to get there, but we made it.
That's great. Lydia, for our listeners who might not know, can you just go into detail a little bit about what the role of a publicist is, and also how that role is significant in the jazz industry versus maybe other styles of music?
Yeah, so a publicist is really the liaison between a public figure and the media. And they're basically responsible for getting the message amplified, and for telling the story of an artist. And in my work, so working in jazz, it's a really kind of like a specialty kind of field. It's sort of a really niche specific thing. And the way that I approach it is I'm working mostly on a project by project basis, where I am getting a new album from an artist and I am helping them kind of strategize to figure out, maybe shaping the narrative they already have, but shaping it to be a bit more applicable for like pitching it to the, to media, kind of working out that strategy with them, and sort of trying to get the project in the best possible light to get covered. And that's really the short version of what I do. I'm basically given a project and we're like, okay, we want to get this covered by like the music media at large. Generally, I'm working in like the jazz space, so to really like get it, like maybe get a feature in Downbeat, or get featured on to like NPR or something like that. That's kind of like the general currency we're dealing with. And it's really just to get the music out there and to get it heard and to get it covered. That's really what a publicist does. And in the jazz world, we're kind of working in this very unique situation where we're dealing with, kind of often pretty complicated music that you've got to find a way to make that palpable to people that might not be super hip into the music. Maybe they don't really know much about jazz, or maybe they are not someone who writes typically about this music. But if we really want to try to expand the audience as much as possible, and that is what I'm trying to do, is to kind of make as many inroads as I can, to get my artists heard in our jazz world, but also outside of that if we possibly can too. So it's a big job with like a lot of different things under the umbrella, but the main purpose is really to get our clients' music heard by as many people as possible, and try to make that happen.
It sounds like connections are definitely very important. And that's something that we've talked about in a lot of these interviews that we've done with people from all over the business, is that forming and maintaining professional relationships is pretty critical, and definitely in publicity. So how did you go about making those connections to start with, especially considering you got your start kind of DIY, doing it for your friends in school? How do you make that transition to a more professional space and build those connections and maintain them?
Yeah, the music business in general is a people business, no matter what it is, whether you're in booking or management or PR, or, just as a musician, like it's all dealing with people. It's about dealing with people, whether it be on the bandstand or dealing with people, via email or whatever it is. So I think that overall, like those people skills are really essential no matter what part of the business you're getting involved in. I do think that with publicity, it's certainly more pronounced, and it really is all about connections. I would say that for me, my the first way I kind of went about even building my list was honestly through just pure research. I mean, I remember, Googling like, cause I went to school in Boston, Boston Globe, like jazz, and seeing, who's covering it. I had no idea about how any of this works. Like, about like an editor assigns. It's not like you could just like pitch a random reporter. Like it doesn't work that way. I mean, you can, but that's not really how, there's all these nuances and stuff that I had to really like learn. And I only learned it by doing it. So for me, a lot of it was just like, yeah, straight up DIY, finding emails, going, looking up like, going to allaboutjazz.com and looking at all the reviewers and like emailing them. I mean, I really went about it in a very like organic way. I never really had people like someone who's like, here's my list, like go ahead and go to town. I've certainly had over the years like people give me lists for certain locales. I've had other colleagues like kind of give me lists unprompted, like be like, hey, here's like a list of people you should have. But something I learned over the years, because when I was younger and I was doing this, like I didn't really I didn't really get it, that the scene really. So I would be really nervous about like people like getting my list. Like I'd be like, oh God, like I don't want people to get my contacts. And then I realized, as things went on, that it's actually like the list is like such a minor part of it. I mean, obviously you need to have the right email address to send to, but it's really like about those connections with the people on the list. So it's like you can get a list of like the best jazz critics in the world. That's great. But if they don't know who you are and they don't already have like a track record with you to trust you on what you're giving them, it only goes so far. And that's something like with maturity, it like took me a while to realize that, and to not get so caught up on like these little things like, oh God, like I don't want to give my contact. It's like, what if they steal it from me? It's like, no, it's really about like your own personal connections. And once I kind of like learned that, I don't know, it kind of like made me feel more at peace about everything, being like, well, you can only really do like as good as you personally can do. And, you know, anyway, all this to say, so I developed the list. Yes, I found these people, but I had to really foster those connections. And it was honestly just by doing it. I was really kind of very nervous actually about like approaching like journalists in the wild. Like if I'd be at a show and I'd see somebody that I was like, oh God, that's so and so, I should really talk to them and like, make a connection with them. If it didn't feel natural and it didn't like naturally occur, like I wouldn't do it because I just felt so uncomfortable doing that kind of thing. Some people are better at that than I am, and I've certainly gotten better at it over the years. But yeah, it's really genuinely forming those connections. And the only way you do that is by really starting to get to know the people you're pitching to, really understanding what they like, doing the research, like seeing what kind of stuff are they reviewing, how active are they, like, how do they like to get their music? Do they like to get CDs? Do they like to get it digitally? Like, do they like to communicate over email? Do they prefer to be on the phone? It's just like these are things that you just kind of learn as you go, and you just got to constantly be paying attention and kind of like keeping a record in your head. Okay, like this guy likes this, he likes to talk this way, and I have to send him a CD. Or this person, I don't have to say more than 5 words, just send him a download link, not even context that he's going to cover it. Like you just have to know. So that's kind of how it happened. It really just happened over time by just building the list. As I kind of, started to accumulate more clients, they start to speak to each other, everyone's word of mouth, and then things, reputation spreads. And before you know it, like you're out there. I will say there was, one extra benefit I did have. I mean, with my dad being a professional musician and like him being out here, there were a lot of people that I kind of knew through just growing up. But I think some people, well, it never really gave me like a leg up per se. I still had to really like prove again that I was like worth talking to. It wasn't like a journalist was just going to answer me because I was Dave Liebman's daughter. Believe me, I tried that. It didn't work. So I had to really prove that, I actually like knew what I was doing and I actually cared. And it wasn't just like, okay, well, let me just be nice to her because, I know her dad. I think, you can only go so far because after that, you've got to deliver and you've got to show results. So it might have helped a little bit, with some people getting them to like maybe open my email, but those connections took years to foster, and it took a really long time, of just pitching the right things and just being cool, and not basically just not overdoing it with any said contact, just so that there'll be a connection. You have to really put an effort into it. So.
I really love what you're saying in this connection first organic approach. I've definitely, in my experience as an agent, have learned that people are really off put when you're just like, here, buy my artist, buy this show, let's do this. And it's way more sustainable when you just approach them as like two people interacting. It's like injecting this humanity into what we do so that it's not some sort of like transactional thing all the time. My question is, how do you how did you and how do you balance this organic approach to relationship building with like the demands of like making a living, for example?
Mm-hmm. I think like for me, like transparency and honesty, like honestly, is the overarching. It's the overarching approach on everything. Like I basically just try to be honest and transparent every single step of the way, with everything. So when an artist is like approaching me about wanting to work with me, I will definitely tell them very frankly whether I think I'm the right publicist for them. There are so many factors that goes into that. I'm so lucky to like have, people that do want to work with my company. And like, I have like a waiting list and we book out like, sometimes like a year in advance. Like it's a really intense process, like even to become a client these days, because there's like so many, there's a lot of people that want representation and there's not that many publicists. So because of that, I always try to just be super honest from the get go with whoever I'm dealing with first, like from the client side and being like, look, this is what I excel in. Like, this is my specialty. This is my sweet spot. And even if I love your music and I love you and I think you're great, like if it doesn't fit there, it doesn't check all those boxes. Like I'm gonna pass on it because I want it to be a great experience for everybody. Sometimes there'll be things that like I want to do, but I see challenges in. And I will definitely tell the artist that, okay, look, I want to do this, but I want to be honest with you about like, this is where I feel my deficiencies are as a publicist. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get you like this, but I think I can get you this. And, I think being like super upfront, I think really helps because it kind of starts the relationship off at the right place. I am so, again, very, very grateful that I'm not in a position where like I don't have to take stuff, at least right now. Watch like a year from now, maybe like I'm saying, give me everything, but like where I'm in a position where I can say no to stuff that doesn't fit or that I don't think is going to be a success. And I also feel that like having that freedom to do that is just so important, because there's really nothing worse than like anybody, whether it be like a booking agent or a manager or a publicist, whatever, taking on an artist and they're kind of like, oh, well, let me take their money and like do what I do because I need to make a living, but like I don't know how it's going to go. I don't like to operate in that space. It's too stressful. So I just think if you start it from a place of true like honesty from the get-go, I think it's helped set the relationship off in the right way. And then you can, sort of like, then you can have like this like kind of like, transactional thing, because it's obviously a service, but like you're presenting it, I guess, in like a way that's a bit more I don't know, it just feels more organic and true. And I'll say that on the other side with journalists, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, there are a lot of journalists that, look, we always need something from someone, but I always try to be really like, like every time I run into a certain journalist, like out on the street at like Smalls, like I'm not going to go up to him and be like, hey, did you get that email I sent? Like, it's just like time and place, and I think that, understanding that like there's a time for building your network and hanging, and like, that social time that you're spending talking about the weather is actually just as valuable as it is as you pitching your project to them, because it sets a foundation that's solid and real. So it's definitely a hard balance to do both. But I think if you just start it from a place like where you naturally just are being true to yourself and true to your artistry and also true to what you want as a business owner, if you are honest from the get-go, I think that it just goes all around much smoother and the balance kind of fills itself out just naturally because you're being cool, for lack of a better phrase.
No, I love that, especially what you were saying about just being upfront with artists about
Yeah.
what you think you can and can't provide,
Yeah,
because that's better for both parties. It's better for the artist to have a realistic expectation,
totally.
and maybe find someone with a more specific niche, but also in the long term, it's better for you because you know that you're only delivering high quality work.
Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah.
And then I also think that maybe sometimes there's not a full understanding that different publicists have different strengths, based on your connections and what you've done in the past. Um, and it does kind of maybe set that expectation back to maybe where it should be, but maybe every publicist isn't right for every artist. And I think it's better for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's like, I think that's something that's really easy to happen with artists is like they'll see one artist accomplish something or play, as agents, I'm sure you see this yourself, they're playing in a certain festival, they're doing something specific, and then they're like, well, if she's doing that or he's doing that, like, why can't I do that too? Or I want to do XYZ because they're doing ABC, and it's really important to not let those comparisons happen. I mean, if you have to try to help yourself from comparing, because as a publicist, just because like we're able to get something for one artist does not mean that we're going to be able to replicate that with another artist, even if they're very similar in style, tone, story, whatever. Every artist is individually very different and very specific. So for us, it's just kind of like, you know, uh, kind of from the get-go, like if I hear an artist kind of using another artist as like an inspiration, in a little bit like in maybe a more aggressive way than I should be, it's a red flag, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I want to like get involved with this artist because maybe their expectations are not really aligned properly. I see a lot of people look at Samara Joy, for example, and they're like, oh, like if she's doing this, like I want to do this too, and it's like totally, but like you got to look at the full picture of Samara Joy and see everything that's involved here. It's much more beyond like what, maybe another artist is dealing with their team. So it's just everyone's got their thing. And I think that comparison is to a degree is helpful for inspiration. But if it's like too much and you're only doing that, you're just bound to get disappointed because a size fits all approach like does not work in this business in any way. So it's really hard to like replicate, something for someone the exact same way. It just doesn't work like that.
And knowing like what you bring to the table too, so that you can really speak about that. And I know that's a huge part of your job, the artistry. I'm wondering, growing up in a super musical household and also coming from a musical background yourself, how does that impact the way that you work now as a publicist? Because I can imagine like it gives you this sensibility in hearing the nuances of everybody's artistic proposal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I mean, I think like in some ways, like being surrounded by like truly like excellence as a young person, it's hard. I will say that like as a when I was like, doing like my like own kind of musician thing, like when I was younger, when I was like singing and piano and all this stuff, and like doing all of that, I felt like a ton of pressure, not from my parents, because like they were not like that. It was like pressure that I like developed in my head about like, oh my God, like, if I'm going to be doing this, like everyone's going to expect a certain level because like of, who my dad is and everyone knows him and blah, blah, blah. And it was very stressful. Like as a teenager, that's a lot to deal with. And so for me, that kind of set the bar, really high, and I was like afraid to kind of go there as a performer. Honestly, I was like, this is not for me. um Whereas like on the business side, I feel like because I grew up in the business so much and I saw so much by osmosis without even realizing it. I mean, my father like didn't have a manager till he turned 70. Like he had that after I was out of the house. Like he didn't have a publicist until I was in college. So like it wasn't even like I was like dealing with these things on the reg. It's just like hearing and seeing and being around it. It definitely changes your frame of mind. So I've always approached it as like the musician first, because that's what I grew up with. So I would always think about it like, well, what's like going to be the best for the musician? Like, what's even financially? It's like, well, like I could charge probably a lot more than I'm charging now, to be honest with you. But I won't do that because like to me, there's just like a threshold that like once you pass that as a jazz musician, it gets it gets like a real investment, like a real investment. And that's something that like you don't need to have a real investment in this when you could be investing in other stuff, because it's just like everything is so, it's like not financially lucrative in general to be a musician now. So it's just like I'm always kind of thinking about things like that. And I think that has a lot to do with my approach. And also when it comes to like telling the stories, of the music that we're working with. I've been around like a lot of just different projects, different things in my life. I've seen some things do really well. I've seen other things knock it off the ground, and I'm like, okay, like why? And like now that I have the knowledge, I can go back and like think about those things that maybe I saw as a kid and be like, okay, how did that happen? How can I not let that happen now? Or what's different? Just stuff like that. I mean, when you just grow up around something, you just kind of know it. And that's just it has informed a lot, and also my radio experience has informed a lot too. I really started in radio. I wanted to do radio, like so understanding like from a radio promoter's standpoint, or a radio host rather, like what do they want to receive, what's radio friendly. I mean, there's so many things that you just kind of develop through osmosis. But I think one of the biggest things honestly is like when you have a really amazing father as a jazz musician, as a father, and you hear some really great shit, you can't fake skill, and you can't fake artistry. And so I do get things across my desk that I'm sure are good, but I do think that the bar is sometimes maybe a little high, like slightly higher, maybe than others in general, just because like I've heard a lot. And I don't know, like I want it's got to really like really, really work for me and really click for me on a lot of different levels musically. And I don't know, it's just like, I can't go to Thanksgiving dinner and have my dad be like, "Hey, let me hear what you're working," and then he hears it, he's like, what are you doing? So that's kind of a simplification, but it just means that like I really do strongly like try to keep a high bar musically, that that fits with what I know is possible out there. So yeah, I don't know, a lot of it is vibes, just vibe.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I feel like people often look at like what we do. I mean, I'm also a musician, but what we do like on the business side, and they don't realize that it also like has a spiritual thing to it, especially if you're coming from it
Yeah.
with this artistic sensibility that all three of us have on this call, and which a lot of people that work in the industry have. Um, so yeah, it's like it can be a very spiritual experience to work with different people and just open up our minds too, and have us thinking in different ways and hearing things and just
Yeah.
um, yeah. I'm wondering, can you talk about the Grammys? I mean, I remember during our conversation before we started recording, I was mentioning to you that when I was watching the premiere ceremony, I saw you all over the place running around and stuff. So I'm wondering what that experience was like for you.
Yeah. Grammys are cool. So yeah, we've been really lucky. We've had nominees every year since 2000. So the 60th Grammys, I'm looking at it on my wall. So that would be, we're going on the 68th Grammys coming up. So 7 years in a row. Had like 46 nominations, I think, or right, 46, or like I don't know, over a dozen wins. So it's been definitely a bright spot, for Lydia Liebman Promotions in general. The thing with the Grammys is, I tell everybody, like, it's like anything else. It's just like a facet of the music business or music industry that like you can choose to participate in or not. It is so not the be all end all. As agents, you could speak probably much more articulately about the effect of winning a Grammy or being nominated for a Grammy, what that has on even booking. It's like, at least in my world, like, yes, sure, everything helps. It is not going to change anyone's career overnight, especially winning in the jazz categories. I mean, Samara Joy is an unusual example because she won in Best New Artist, and that is a much different thing. So I think when people hear Grammys and they see Grammys, it can really become like the main focus of everything. Like, they just want to win a Grammy, which I completely understand. But there is more to life than that. And I think it's just about, again, understanding what it is. In the end, the Grammys are a trade organization of 13,000 people that are voting for stuff, and it really comes down to a numbers game and understanding how it works and understanding how many votes can people give, because they're kind of contained by field and category, and then knowing, well, what are the other categories in the same field as jazz? Is there a way to reach those people? And it's a little bit less complicated than I think people think. And I think that, every year there's upsets about the Grammys, like, oh my God, they really got this one wrong, or how could they give it to this person again? It's votes, it's people, it's just numbers. So that's the thing. I'm really like super proud of everybody that wins a Grammy. It's one of the greatest things every year when we have people that get nominated. It's a thrilling thing. It's a wonderful thing because it feels like, your hard work has really brought you to something that's tangible, which can be really hard in this business to feel like you're making any inroads anywhere. So it's like to have like a Grammy nomination, it's like that is like a true marker of, some form of success, but it's not the only form of success. And, those that get nominated and don't win, or those that never get nominated, like, it's okay. Like, it's just another thing. But if you do want to get into it, there's a whole way of learning how to be part of the Recording Academy and going to events and networking. And it's just literally like anything else. But I can say that this year, was a very special year. We had 10 nominations, which is the most I think we've had in any given year, directly off our roster. And Zakai Curtis and Taylor Ikesty both won. And, in Zakai's case, particularly first time nominee, first time winner, younger kind of person for the category, was really means a lot, and Taylor as well. I'm so happy for Taylor, a second time that he's won this category, and to show, like a repeat of success is also really great, because it shows that, okay, like, that wasn't a fluke. I never thought it was a fluke. Taylor deserves every Grammy he ever gets. But I was like, when it happens again, you're like, okay, cool. Like, this is good. Like, we are doing the right thing, so it's a lovely time, a great experience. And for me, the best part about it is, I really go to the Grammys every year. I take all my clients on the red carpet. I want all of our jazz clients to have as close, like the same experience as like, the pop girlies can get, as much as possible. Like we want jazz to be in those spaces. So like if I can get, extra to talk to my client on the red carpet, like that's great, because that's at least putting a jazz artist in front of someone who doesn't normally talk to a jazz artist. And that's great for us as the genre. Like anything to get the doors open, I'm there for it. So I would say that makes the whole experience really worth it. Whether you win or lose, just being there and being present and showing up, I think just says a lot, and it makes people pay attention, which we all need. So that's how I sort of feel about the whole shebang.
How have you seen at places like that people from the outside, I mean outside of the jazz world, have you seen them being receptive to jazz musicians? I know like there's a lot of movements that are like bringing jazz outside of a niche thing now. So I'm wondering if you can speak about that.
Yeah, it all depends. Every year is different. I'll be honest. I'll tell you, like last year, like using the Grammys as an example, I thought the red carpet was like amazing. They were super friendly to jazz artists. They were saying yes to talking to people. Like they were sort of super down. There are reasons for that. There are cultural reasons for that. There are reasons with the scene for that. I mean, there's so many factors outside of us that affect that. This year, very hard red carpet. We had people that, wanted to talk to our clients. That was great. But we also had a lot of people say no. And there are reasons for that too, that I'm well aware of in the pop music ecosystem, which affect everything. So it all really depends. I think that in the end, it's like the cultural moments that we all live in are constantly changing, and it is all dependent on the cultural moment. So I think that when Samara won Best New Artist, like that was a little kind of like boost for us in general, where people were kind of paying a little bit of attention to jazz. Same like with John Batiste being out there. Same thing with like, Robert Glasper and Nora Jones and Esperanza. I mean, anytime anyone kind of like crosses over, Kamasi, whatever, it's cool because it opens the door. The only problem with that is that there's a very small quota for like what that jazz percentage of the coverage they're able to get. It's a very, very, very small window. So if they fill that quota by doing their one piece on like Jean Baptiste or, Samara Joy or whatever, it's the likelihood of them coming back around like a mainstream outlet to do something on jazz again for a while is limited. So that's the only thing. And this happens a lot where like the air gets kind of sucked out of the room by, maybe a handful of particular artists. And that can be a drag, but in the end, like you just sort of have to celebrate those moments and just keep trying to get the door open. Because I do find that once people come in contact with jazz music, at least in the way that like the things that get put on national stages, once they come in contact with it, it's not quite as intimidating and scary as I think people think. A perfect example is like we had Lakeisha Benjamin doing the Colbert, the Late Show with Stephen Colbert for 4 nights last year. She sat in with the band, the whole week, and then she did Tiny Desk on that Friday. And seeing people's reactions to like the extended video of her song that the Louis Cato and the band did, like seeing those YouTube comments and then seeing the comments on like the Tiny Desk. I mean, people loved it. They're like, this is fire. Like, holy shit. Like, this is amazing. And it's like, once they see it, it's cool. We just need to get those chances for them to be seen. And that is something that I'm always trying to do. And to do that, you got to have the right artist because, a lot of the artists that I work with are not going to be that bridge. And I know that. But some artists can be, so you just got to kind of ride the wave when you've got someone who can kind of open those doors a little bit and you try to get in. But in the end, it's all about the cultural moment. And that's just something that we always have to keep in mind, that the state of the world, what's going on, all those things affect like how jazz gets covered, if it gets covered, just with everything that's happening. Nothing exists in a vacuum,
Those are really great things to just keep in mind for any artist aspiring to grow and get coverage as well. And I think you're totally correct. As someone who doesn't have as much of a jazz background, and I came in to MusicWorks International working with Matt and Catherine. Seeing the music is such a big part of it, and I guess that is in large part the role of the publicist is to get it in front of people and get that success.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. It's just like finding those cracks that we can kind of get into. That's something that I always am trying to do with my clients is, just sort of like I'm constantly researching, constantly identifying like people that might be warm to this. And it's like once you kind of find one person at a specific outlet, you can be cool. You can just kind of you got to be smart. You can't like pitch everything to them. Like you've got to be really choice. Like there are some really big time editors and producers that have been really like friendly to me and have put my clients in and on stuff. And they're not on my regular list. And like there's a reason for that. It's because I know they don't care about most jazz releases, and I definitely don't want to like drown out stuff by myself. Like I don't want them to be on my media list, get all this shit, and they're like, well, I can't do anything with this. And then before they know it, they just kind of like, well, Lydia's like the jazz person. I mean, I can't cover any of her things. Like that's not how you want to do it, and it's like you got to be really targeted and really like, okay, I'm gonna write, my dude from Pitchfork only when I know that the project I have is something that would be applicable to him, and it usually works. Like you got to be intentional and really you can throw things to the wall, and I think like it depends on what wall you're throwing it to see what sticks, but like you got to be careful. You don't want to like throw to like the big wall everything, because eventually you just keep like you'll just cancel yourself out. So I try to like throw things to the wall for my jazz people, my jazz media, and then when I have things that could get kind of into other spaces, then it's like being very, very, very intentional about what I'm pitching, how I'm pitching. I mean, any good publicist would do that. But it's just really having a good and honest understanding of like where an artist is in their career and like what's viable for them. And, I could have a project come across my desk that has like let's say multi-genre ish, maybe has crossover appeal. But if they haven't really cultivated like an audience, like in the same way that a pop artist maybe would, and that's the type of outlet I'm pitching it to, like it doesn't really matter how great the music is. Like I'm dead in the water. It's like there are just all these other factors that go into it, that you have to really consider when you're doing this type of work.
I know jazz is like a very catch-all term, but do you work with any projects that are like completely outside of the jazz world?
Not really, honestly. I mean, I definitely have things that are on different ends of the spectrum.
Hmm.
For instance, like I mean, just like a sampling, it's like last year I had projects from Wadada Leo Smith and Amina Claudine Myers, which was like the super avant-garde, like super out stuff, versus like I had a vocalist do like all songs that had the word April in it because that's her name, and like a bunch of standards and originals, like random stuff. And then I'll have somebody like Spanish Harlem Orchestra putting out like a pretty like salsa Jira record, that's like really really that, so I have really wide range of what I can take under that umbrella. But I'm my days of doing like indie pop jazz explorations are probably not happening these days, just because it's so hard, and I've learned that that shit is tough for me, and it doesn't matter, sometimes it doesn't matter like how good your pitch is, and it doesn't matter, it's like in some worlds if they don't really know you, that artist is being used to break down the barrier, which is great for me, but it's not so great for the artist, because like they're just, it's just not right, so that's the thing. I really try to be really intentional, and I am really lucky that like I have my husband works with me as well, and like he's a musician, but he also does like he's from Puerto Rico, and he understands the Latin music scene extremely well. He's native Spanish speaker, so you know I can work like in that arena confidently because I have somebody on my team who understands it and can deal with it. But like I'm not an expert in other types of music, so I don't want to claim to be pitching that just because it would be fun. It's just not, yeah, it's not really my thing. I've gotten really really specific and kind of gotten more narrow as I've progressed in this, but it's helped me really like trim kind of like the fat, I guess, on what I'm working, and also to be really intentional in like what I can say yes to and what is a no, not because it's not good, but just because it doesn't fit, my like sweet spot of what I wanted to, what would be the easiest for me to do my job.
It's interesting to like, sorry, Eamon. Just like saying no. I
Yeah.
mean, this is something that we've talked about. I think with a couple other people on the interview series here is like, and also like when I work with musicians in that space, like there's a power in saying no. What was your journey like getting to that point where you were able to say no?
It's hard.
Or
Yeah.
just knowing when to take opportunities and knowing when to like,
Yeah, I
yeah.
still struggle with it a lot. I mean, I have to say no. I mean, this is the thing. It's like there are only so many hours in a day. We work close to 100 releases a year as it is. Plus, I do PR for Birdland and for DC Jazz Festival and like a bunch of other, organizations and stuff. So that's like what the roster is already. And it's like, I'm probably turning down, I don't know, like I'm probably taking like one out of every five that comes across. So imagine like how much is coming across the desk if like that's how much I'm taking. And I'm still taking 100 releases a year and still turning down the vast majority of what comes by. So, and that's just because again, like people are just everybody wants a publicist. So it's like, it's like how do you deal with all that? And it's really hard. I mean, I think like, saying no in the beginning was make me really nervous. Like I'd get really scared to say no because I'd be like, oh my God, like if I say no, like yeah, what about like when I need stuff and I've said no and then like maybe I won't have any clients next year and like, oh my God, like, it's really hard. You have to like really trust the process and like being, in the end, like a freelancer forever, which is what it is in the end. Like even if you have your own agency, even if you're incorporated, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're still, it's up to you on if you're working next year. So um it's really tough. Like you have to just like trust yourself that yes, I'm saying no to this because it doesn't feel right. Something better will come along that will be a better fit for the time frame they want. And that's the way you have to sort of think about it. Just always trusting that something that is the right fit will come. But yeah, it definitely took me a while. I would say that probably like in the last like 5 years, I've gotten really confident about saying no to certain things. But in the past, like, yeah, I would say yes to stuff because I was like, just didn't know how to say no. Some people would really try to like steamroll me into saying yes. And I was like not confident enough to say no. I mean, there's been like it's been a journey. It's been a big journey, but you just have to trust yourself. And if something feels off or like you're getting a red flag or like your intuition's like, oh, this guy kind of seems like a little like not cool, you're probably accurate about that. There have been some funny times though where I've had projects come across my desk that I've been a little unsure about or like other people in my team have been unsure about. And ironically, one of those was actually one of our first Grammy wins. Like the project came across the desk and we were like, I don't know, like I'm not sure if like this is a good fit for us. And I was like, I think I'm gonna try it. Like it's gonna be a challenge, but I'm gonna do it. And someone else from my team was like, I don't know about this. Like this seems like really hard. Like I don't know if I think you're gonna like this might not be a good move. And it ended up doing so well that like we got it. It was like one of our first Grammy nominations, one of our first Grammy wins. In the early years. And I was like, huh. So sometimes but I did know. I like my heart told me it was going to be okay. I knew it, even though I felt that it was nervous, but I was like, it's going to be all right. And I just think trusting your intuition is a big part of it. And you'll know when it's not right. You just know. But there's also nothing wrong with saying yes to stuff if you really truly believe like there could be a chance of success and you're willing to do it. All everybody wants is just your best work. And that's what I tell anyone before they hire me. It doesn't matter who they are. I'm like, you're not, I can't guarantee you anything. I literally can't. Like I could pitch forever, pitch to everybody, do the best possible press release ever. The music can be amazing. And maybe nobody will want to cover it. That's very unlikely, but like it's possible. That's the risk you're running. But I'm just going to put my best foot forward and just really, really, really try and try to do my best. And I think that that's really what people want results. They want that downbeat review, but they're also happy to know that you tried. At least to a degree. But,
If things aren't working, how do you kind of push through that, even just personally and professionally?
yeah. It's really tough. I can count on one hand. Like the troublesome clients I've had where I've had, where I've really had like a problem. And I've had to address it. It really depends on what the issue is. I will say that over the last few years, I've gotten so much better at screening. So like, I kind of know right away, like if someone's going to be an issue, and usually like my calls are right. Where like, if someone seems like they're going to be a little, I don't know, maybe a little bit like neurotic or maybe like a little like don't really know how things work and they have like lots of questions. I mean, I can deal with that to a certain degree. And that's okay. But if they kind of have unrealistic expectations and I'm getting that vibe from the get-go, I'm like, no. I will say that when things are kicking off, if we're in it and then things are not cool, it's really tough. I mean, for me, like I do evaluate things in real time. And if we're having a project that let's say everything's cool, like the relationship with the client is cool, like we're personally cool, super cool. We've done everything, the press release, we've done it, we've launched it. And like, I'm just not getting bites despite me pitching the shit out of it. And it's just not happening. Like, I will usually go to them and be like, look, I'm really sorry. I'm having a lot of trouble with this. I'm really not sure why. Or I can tell them why, or XYZ or whatever. But like, I will sometimes be like, I don't feel right, like taking the full fee. This is very unusual, but like, I will sometimes like give them a little break, or maybe I will, push it forward, to like the next project. I mean, I try to have like an open line of communication. Where things really get messed up is like when the artist is not on the same page and they just think it's like something that you're doing wrong, which is like, well, it's your fault that they're not covering me. Well, it's like, no, bro, that's not how this works.
Like
And
getting you shows.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like they don't get it. And it's like I definitely have to do my share of like orientation often, remind people how it works, remind about the process. But if they really get like belligerent, which is very few, but I've had a couple, I mean, I have been like, listen, I'm done with this. And like, I'm, great. Here, I've done all I can. Here's the work, go out and, get, here's the press release. Like, here's what you got and like, go off. I rarely had to do that though. Cause I really try to work things out. Sometimes I have clients that don't really understand. Maybe they've hired like a corporate PR before, or they work in academia and they're used to like PR being done a totally different way. And they're used to these giant budgets and they don't understand that like, no, I can't give you, like a 600 deep, press report on what everyone's saying, because that's not how this works. Like, so having to sort of like remind people about the parameters, remind people what we're dealing with. Education goes a long way. Being honest from the get-go goes a long way. But then, if someone like doesn't pay or some crazy shit happens, I mean, they're on that list. And when the time comes that they want PR again, that phone is not being answered. And that's what happens. I have a list, I got my people that wronged me. And that's their loss. I mean, it is what it is, but it can be really awkward though when things aren't like working. I also kind of like try to rejig the strategy. Like, I try to be like, okay, can we try something else? There's you just got to have an open line of communication, but if they trust you as their publicist and you trust them as your client, it helps make things a little easier. And artists that I work with for years, like we'll have some projects do amazing and we'll have some that don't do as great. And most of the time, like they get it, like they understand, like that's just the way it goes. Not everything can be a banger. I mean, it's hard actually to continually level up. If you're doing really well, how do you like do better the next time? It's like there is a limit of how high you can go. So that's the thing. I think it's just like a constant work in progress, and communication is so important in those situations.
I want to pivot a little bit just to start wrapping up,
Yeah.
and think about some listeners who might be either looking to get into PR publicity, or they're a developing artist and they want to try to do some of this work themselves. A lot of it, like you said, is working on these connections or studying what the social moment is and what isn't viable or what may be viable. Do you have advice for anyone looking to get into the industry in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, well, as a like professional who's looking to get into PR, I would say, finding a mentor is always something that's helpful. And it doesn't have to be like, I'm looking for a mentor. Will you be my mentor? Like, it's not so much like that. It's just that, when you find yourself in situations with older people that have been out here, to really like watch them and observe them and really utilize them, not necessarily be like asking them a zillion questions, but just watching and seeing. One of the most eye-opening experiences I ever had was when I was in intern at Sirius Radio with Mark Ruffin, who is now like one of my dearest colleagues. Like we're very close. And at the time, I mean, he was my boss at Sirius Radio, and I watched that go down. I watched people pitch him. I watched to see how he edited things, what he passed on, what he said yes to, and I just observed all of that. And I think that that's really the thing. Like if you're looking to get into the industry from the professional standpoint, watch what people are doing and just soak that all up. And then, hopefully you maintain a good relationship where you can actually like have a good mentorship situation where you can feel safe going to them if you have a question about something, or you can run things by them. I actually famously, I won't use any names to say because I don't want to blow up anyone's spot, but I did intern at a booking agency in the jazz space many years ago when I was in college. And I like didn't really kind of get that. I did to a degree, but I'm not really like in the way that I'll put it this way. Had there been more of a more mentorship type of thing, maybe I would be in booking these days, but I wasn't really getting that. And no one kind of gave me that. And I was like, oh, this doesn't seem like it's for me. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, I'm just not going to do this, And that was like, I'm kind of, not a missed opportunity, but kind of where like, maybe I would have been an amazing
a redirection.
yeah, like maybe I would have been a good booking agent, like if I had done that, but I didn't have that. So I never did, so that's the thing. It's like, where on the other hand, like with radio, I had people that really looked out for me. And in publicity, I could identify like other mentors that, were really nice about helping me out. So I really think that's important. And as an artist, if you don't have like the money to hire a publicist, but like you kind of like want to try to do PR stuff like for your recording, again, it's research. Like the way I started by researching Boston Globe jazz, like it's the same thing, like just going online and seeing, well, who's writing about your friends, who's writing about your peers. I always tell people, identify an artist that is more advanced in their career, whose career you admire, not necessarily their musicality and their vibe, but more like where their career is gone. Like, look at them. Like if you like where Cecile McLaurin Salvant's career is going, like, look her up and see, well, who's her publicist, who's her label, who's her agent, who's her manager, like those things. So at least you can like have somewhere to start with. And then you like go to that management roster and you're like, oh, who else does he have? Oh, he has Ben Wendell. Oh, he has Gerald Clayton. Okay. And then like you understand more about, what this person, like who the professionals are and what they're doing, so that as you as an artist yourself, you have like targets to identify. Not like, okay, I'm just going to send this out into the ether and hope that someone who writes about jazz is going to see it. No, like take the time, go to All About Jazz, go look at the last like 20 reviews, see what their names are, write them notes, say, hi, I'm so-and-so. I have a new record I independently produced. I'd love to put it out. I'm sorry, I'd love to get it to you to possibly cover, is it okay if I send it to you? And they may not answer, but at least like you're putting yourselves in their inbox and they see your name. And then, if you were to hire a publicist down the line who can already kind of like cut that work out for you, there's already been like an introduction of who you are. So, you can kind of do this stuff on your own, to a degree until you're ready for a publicist. And it's just like a very, it's just one of those things like you've got to like just live in it and be in it and just see the scene. And I think you kind of will learn, as you go. But yeah, finding mentors and people that are going to help you out that are older than you, I think is really an amazing first step.
And is there a clear moment for when an artist might be ready to have a publicist, or what's your advice to artists who approach you and they might not be ready, or maybe they are?
It all depends. It really depends on like where they are in their career. And, my whole opinion of like when to hire a publicist or whether to release on a label or independently, like all those things, that has all changed so much over the years. It really, because like the music business has changed so much. So I would say that, a publicist has to have stuff to publicize. Having a project without any touring dates can be difficult. Having a project with like very like kind of up and coming people without established names can be really hard. Doing it without a label can be really hard. I mean, there's all these different factors, but I would say that, if you are investing and you're putting an album together, you're investing in all those things. It doesn't hurt to investigate to see if you can get a publicist who believes in it and is willing to work with you on it. It definitely doesn't hurt to investigate it. But if it's a situation where you're not able to get a publicist because maybe like everyone's busy or maybe they're just not feeling it or who knows, don't just settle for someone just to have one. I think that you really should like do it when it's right and not just do it, well, I have to get any car at all. So I'm just going to get whatever I can get that's cheapest. Like, that's just not how it works. Like, you're not going to have a good experience that way. But I guess like, objectively speaking, I mean, if an artist is going to be like, is planning on being in the public eye for any particular amount of time, like, yeah, you should really have a publicist to help manage that. It's just that like, it's hard because these days, like a lot of people, you can just put music out on your own. So, my go-to answer used to be, yeah, if you're putting out music, you should hire a publicist, because like obviously like what you need to get it heard. Now there's just so much music and there's so many ways to make music. It's like, does everything need to be heard by everyone? Maybe not.
That's a different question.
Yeah, that's a different question, but that's more philosophical, I guess. But it's just that, that's the thing. It's impossible to have a publicist on every new jazz project that's coming out, because there's just so much these days. But if you are planning on being in the public eye, if you are looking at your career as a career with a long arc, if you're working on getting gigs, if you're playing with other people and like this is what you're doing, and if you plan on putting music out regularly, like, yeah, you got to start somewhere. But if you're kind of like just graduating, like I did a masterclass with University of Michigan this morning with college students, and they kind of asked me this too. And it's like, well, if you're just graduating and you don't really have like an audience yet, and you're still figuring out your shit, maybe don't do that yet. And then, maybe put the album out first, put it on Bandcamp, invest in digital marketing, maybe like do a distributor that has good playlist connections and try that first. And then maybe like the next one, maybe hire a publicist. It's all relative and all kind of depends.
This has been great. Thank you so much, Lydia. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for being with us and sharing all this knowledge.
I hope it's cool. It's not the most interesting stuff.
It's super interesting. And I think one of the most interesting parts is just this organic part of like how you got into it. A lot of people go to school for publicity, for journalism, for all this stuff, but getting into something and having people, like you said, that are older, you kind of show you what's good is something really beautiful, I think.
Yeah, no, it's always fun to talk about this stuff, and I hope it's full and valuable. We'll get something out of it, whatever. PR, I feel like it's kind of shrouded in mystery a little bit. Like people don't really like know what we do. I think there's a lot of like publicists that aren't that great, so like reputation's not great, and it's like if there's any way I can like demystify like the scene, like I'm really always happy to do that, because the more knowledge you have, the better you can like kind of attack your career. So yeah, I'm happy to do this.
That's what we'll call this episode, is Demystifying PR with Lydia Liebman.
Okay.
For everyone listening, Lydia is one of our pros on our Meet the Pros program on our Anyone Can Book Gig platform. So if you want to book time individually with her, she is up there and available.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, too. It's so much fun.